So let me ask you this. What would you actually sacrifice for free speech? I mean, really sacrifice. Your job, your family's well-being, even your own freedom.
It's a tough question, isn't it?
It really is. Today, we're doing a deep dive into someone who faced exactly that. Richard Carlile. An extraordinary figure who, well, he literally put everything on the line for the right to publish.
Yeah, and we need to set the scene a bit. We're talking early 19th century London. It's a pretty volatile time. Expressing radical political views or even religious ones that went against the grain could land you in some serious, serious trouble. The government had a lot of power back then to clamp down on dissent.
And for this deep dive, we're looking at some specific sources, right?
That's right. We've got some really insightful excerpts from London 2022, The Heritage of Fleet Street, Volume 1, Number 10. And we've also pulled in some additional notes from the Spartacus educational website. So together, they give us a pretty rich, detailed picture of Carlyle's whole journey.
Okay, great. So our mission today, then, is to sort of unpack how this guy, Richard Carlile, went from being, what, a tinsmith?
A humble tinsmith. Yeah.
Right, from that to becoming one of the most, I guess, defiant and influential publishers of his time. We'll look at the huge challenges he faced, how his actions actually, maybe surprisingly, sparked public awareness.
And even his impact on things like women's rights later on, which is fascinating.
Exactly. So, yeah, get ready for a story about resilience, rebellion, really the beginnings of the modern free press as we know it.
It's quite a story.
Okay, so let's get into it. Richard Carlile, born December 9th, 1790, Ashburton, Devon. Now, his early life, it wasn't exactly smooth sailing.
No, definitely not. His father actually deserted the family, left them relying on just a small shop. Tough start.
But he did get some education.
He did, yeah. About 6 years of free schooling locally. Crucially, that taught him to read and write. You know, a foundation that would become incredibly important later on.
Right. And then, at 12.
12 years old, yeah, he leaves school, gets apprenticed as a tin plateman over in Plymouth.
Okay.
Then we fast forward a bit. 1813, Carlile gets married. Soon after, he and his wife head to London.
The big move.
Yep. And over the next few years, they have 5 kids, though sadly, only 3 survived infancy.
Oh, that's tough.
It really was. Carlile found work in London as a tinsmith, same trade, but then the winter of 1816 hits. His hours get cut drastically.
And that means economic hardship. Big time.
Exactly. Severe hardship for the whole family.
And this period, this economic crisis, it seems like it was more than just a setback for him personally. It was kind of the spark, wasn't it? The thing that forged his radical beliefs.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. With his family struggling, he starts looking for answers, for reasons why, and he finds them in the political reform movement that was gaining steam at the time.
So it wasn't just about attending a few meetings. It was a real shift.
A profound shift, yeah. From just being a craftsman trying to get by to becoming this budding activist. This is really where his fight for free expression truly begins.
What does that tell us, though, about what drives people towards social change? Is it always personal hardship?
Well, it's often a powerful catalyst, isn't it? For Carlile, these ideas about reform weren't abstract theories. They felt like real solutions to his family's suffering right here, right now. He started hearing speakers like Henry Hunt. Hunt was openly slamming the parliamentary system. I mean, a system where maybe only 3 men out of every 100 could even vote.
Wow, 3%.
Yeah. And hearing that, Carlile could directly connect his own difficult experience, his poverty, to these bigger systemic problems. It turned that personal struggle into this powerful drive for change. It fueled his decision to eventually jump into publishing himself.
And he had some personal history with radical ideas being suppressed too, didn't he? Something about Tom Paine.
Yes, exactly. He remembered back in his hometown, the local vicar condemning Tom Paine just for advocating reform. They even got people worked up enough to burn Paine in effigy.
Goodness.
So seeing that kind of reaction probably, really cemented his own resolve much later.
Okay, so he connects with these ideas. He sees the need for change. How does he get into publishing?
Well, he decides to try and make a living, actually, by selling the very writings of Tom Paine there in London. So 1817, he rents a shop, Fleet Street.
Ah, Fleet Street. The heart of it all.
The heart of it all. And officially becomes a publisher. His first move was quite clever, actually. He took Paine's The Rights of Man, divided it into sections.
Bite-sized chunks?
Exactly. Sold them as small, affordable pamphlets. This made these, pretty radical ideas accessible to a much wider audience, people who couldn't afford a whole book.
Smart. And successful.
Very. And it wasn't long before he launched his own thing, a radical newspaper called The Republican.
The Republican, okay.
And this wasn't just opinion pieces. It reported on political meetings, featured extracts from books, poems by supporters of reform like Shelley and Byron.
Big names even then.
Oh, yeah. And the paper just took off. It became incredibly popular, clearly tapped into this public hunger for news and viewpoints that weren't, controlled by the establishment. Carlile, apparently, was soon making a profit of about £50 a week.
£50 a week. Back then, that's a huge sum.
A very substantial sum, yeah. Shows the demand was there.
Okay, so things are going well. He's influential. He's making money. But then comes a really pivotal and quite dark moment. Peterloo.
Ah, yes. August 16th, 1819. A date that really changes things. Carlile was actually invited to be on the platform with Henry Hunt again. This was at a huge meeting for parliamentary reform held at St. Peter's Fields in Manchester.
Okay.
But the local magistrates, they panicked. They ordered the yeomanry, sort of a local civilian militia, often seen as, basically thugs for the establishment. They ordered them to break up the meeting, to arrest Hunt. And they charged into this peaceful crowd on horseback, sabers drawn.
Oh, no.
Tragically, 11 people were killed, many hundreds injured. It became known infamously as the Peterloo Massacre.
It's just chilling, isn't it?
Yeah.
A peaceful protest met with such brutality. How did something like Peterloo affect public opinion? Beyond just the people already reading Carlile, did it galvanize things?
Oh, absolutely. Peterloo was a watershed moment. It kind of ripped away any mask, any illusion that the government was just acting in the people's best interest.
Right.
For Carlile, who was there, saw it happen. It wasn't just a story. It was this deep personal outrage. It absolutely solidified his resolve. And for the wider public, it was like undeniable proof of tyranny. It fueled an even deeper desire for information, for news outside the government-controlled press.
And Carlyle's response in The Republican.
Fearless. Utterly fearless. The very next edition gave this vivid description of the military charging the crowd. And crucially, he didn't just report it. He directly blamed the government for its role in the massacre.
That must have been incredibly risky.
Hugely risky. Remember, there were strict laws on seditious libel. Basically, publishing anything that might encourage people to hate the government was a serious crime.
A crime against the state.
Pretty much. Plus, the authorities were already furious with him for publishing Tom Paine's Age of Reason.
Why that one specifically?
Because it was extremely critical of the Church of England, another pillar of the establishment.
Okay.
So Carlile was already a marked man, you could say.
So inevitably.
Inevitably. October 1819, just a couple of months after Peterloo, Carlile is arrested, tried, and found guilty. Blasphemy and seditious libel.
And the sentence?
3 years. 3 years in Dorchester jail. And it gets worse. His offices on Fleet Street were raided, his entire stock of books and papers confiscated.
Devastating. That sounds like it should have been the end of the Republican, the end of his influence.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Huh.
But what happened next is, it says so much about Carlyle's sheer determination and also about the public's thirst for what he was publishing. Even though he's locked up in Dorchester jail, Carlile refuses to be silenced. He keeps writing articles, material for The Republican from his prison cell.
Wow. How did it get published?
His wife, Jane, she stepped up and took over the publishing.
His wife, Jane, right. But wasn't she taking a huge risk, too?
A massive risk. And here's the fascinating part, maybe the paradox. Carlyle's persecution, the trial, the imprisonment, it actually fueled demand for his paper.
Really? How so?
The publicity from the trial made him and the paper famous. Or infamous, depending on your view. Circulation shot up dramatically. The Republicans started outselling the big, established pro-government newspapers, even outselling the Times.
Outselling the Times from prison. That's incredible.
It really is. It's a classic example of what some people now call the Streisand effect, right? Where trying to suppress something just draws way more attention to it.
Yeah.
Carlyle's persecution turned him into a kind of symbol, didn't it? A martyr for free speech, a beacon for everyone demanding reform.
That's just amazing resilience. But given those risks, and the fact that the government clearly wanted him shut down, why did the Republican manage to thrive like that? Was it just his defiance or something else?
I think it was a mix of things. Definitely his defiance, his willingness to suffer for his beliefs that resonated hugely with a public that was fed up with censorship. But also, practically speaking, the price point was key. He'd always aimed to make his paper affordable for ordinary working-class people.
Right. Accessibility.
Exactly. But the government wasn't giving up. They tried another tactic.
Yeah, is that?
In December 1819, while he's still in jail, they bring in new laws. They slap a hefty 4-pence tax, 40'd, on cheap newspapers like his.
The tax specifically targeting radical papers.
Pretty much seemed that way. And they also stipulated these papers couldn't be sold for less than 7 pence. Now remember, most working people were earning less than 10 shillings a week back then.
So 7 pence for a newspaper? That's a significant chunk of someone's weekly wage.
A huge chunk. It was a direct hit aimed at pricing the working class out of reading radical news. A deliberate attempt to shrink his readership.
And did they stop there? Just with the tax?
Oh no. They kept up the pressure through prosecutions. Anyone involved in publishing or even just selling radical papers was targeted. The scale of it is pretty shocking, actually.
How bad did it get?
It was relentless. So Jane Carlile, his wife, who's publishing the paper while he's inside.
Yeah.
1821, she gets arrested, sentenced to 2 years in Dorchester jail alongside him for seditious libel.
She gets jailed too, while he's already in there.
Yes. And get this, their daughter, Hypatia, was actually born inside the prison.
Born in prison? Good grief.
So Jane's imprisoned. Who takes over then? Richard Carlile's sister, Mary.
His sister steps in.
She does. But guess what happens? 6 months later, she's arrested and imprisoned too.
You're kidding. The whole family.
It's unbelievable. And it didn't stop there. Over the next few months, the records show over 150 ordinary men and women shopkeepers, vendors, were sent to prison just for selling the Republican.
Just for selling it. 150 people.
Yeah. It really makes you think, doesn't it? When does trying to stamp out an idea just end up spreading it further? It certainly seemed to backfire with Carlile. It highlighted how difficult, maybe futile it is to try and jail an idea.
Wow. So Carlile eventually gets out of prison in 1825. After all that, does he, maybe take a step back? Lie low?
Not Richard Carlile. No, he returns straight to publishing. But what's interesting is his focus starts to broaden quite significantly.
Yeah, so.
He becomes this really strong, very vocal supporter of women's rights.
Women's rights in the 1820s.
Exactly. He starts writing articles arguing that women should have the right to vote. Not just that, but that they should be eligible to be elected to Parliament.
That's incredibly radical for the time.
Way ahead of his time. And then in 1826, he publishes a book called Every Woman's Book.
Every Woman's Book? What was that about?
This was dynamite. It openly advocated for birth control and for the sexual emancipation of women.
Birth control.
Yeah.
In 1826.
Yes. You can imagine the reaction. It was seen as absolutely scandalous, even more controversial, arguably, than his earlier political or religious writings.
So this wasn't just the small shift in focus. This was him pushing the boundaries even further.
Absolutely. It wasn't some minor side project. It was a radical extension of his core belief in free expression, free thought, applied to an area that made many people deeply uncomfortable.
What was the impact of that book and his focus on women's rights? Did it gain traction or just cause more trouble?
Both, really. Every Woman's Book was revolutionary. It sparked widespread outrage, more criticism, more legal battles for him. But at the same time, it laid some really crucial groundwork. It opened up conversations that would later feed into feminist movements and public health discussions. Things we're still talking about today in some ways. He was constantly, relentlessly pushing the edges of what society deemed acceptable.
But all this fighting, all this boundary pushing, it must have taken a toll. Did he ever find himself in trouble with the law again?
Oh, yes. His relentless campaigning continued to put him right back in the authorities' crosshairs. In 1830, he was back in prison.
Again? What, for this time?
For writing an article supporting agricultural laborers. They were campaigning against wage cuts, protesting their conditions, and Carlile wrote in support of them. That was enough to get him jailed again.
How long for this time?
2 years. When he finally got out in 1832, he was, well, broken financially, deeply in debt. He lived the rest of his life in extreme poverty.
That seems so unjust, after everything he fought for.
It does. He died in 1843, but his funeral tells another story. Apparently, it was absolutely packed. Huge crowds turned out. It was this massive public recognition of the vital role he'd played, the sacrifices he'd made in that long fight for a free press.
Died in poverty, but remembered by the people.
Exactly. You know, Richard Carlile's commitment, it was just unwavering, wasn't it? Even writing from behind bars, convinced that knowledge, different viewpoints, all of it should be accessible to absolutely everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And that paradox we talked about is so striking. The authorities try to crush him. They jail his wife, his sister, over 150 sellers. And what happens? Demand for the Republican just skyrockets. It ends up outselling the government's favored papers, like the Times.
It really makes you question the whole strategy of suppression.
It does. When does trying to silence something just give it a bigger platform? It's a powerful lesson, I think, about the unintended consequences of censorship, something we still see playing out today, perhaps.
His whole life story is incredible, from witnessing Peterloo, that brutality,
Yeah.
to then years later championing women's suffrage, even birth control.
Mm.
He was always pushing, wasn't he? Always challenging what was considered acceptable. He died poor, as you said, but that packed funeral, it really speaks volumes about the impact he had. So maybe the question for you, our listener, to think about is this. When you consider Carlyle's relentless fight against censorship, the immense personal sacrifices he and his family made for freedom of the press, what do you think is the true cost and maybe the ultimate value of having unrestricted information in our world today?
That's definitely something to mull over.
Something to think about until our next deep dive.